From the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, it's P.I.D. Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and yes, we are back. You can't get rid of us no matter how hard you try.
That's right. Back in your ear holes and ready to testify.
Open your head hole, Slappy. Sorry, that's a Brack reference.
Yes. Well, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen, and we appreciate it if you'd take a moment to download our free app.
Please do, because all of our stuff is there.
And because it is our own app, and the company that hosts the content there, this program, our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, and our podcast, my podcast, A View from the Bunker, plus our weekly broadcast program, Unraveling Revelation, and all of those archives as time allows.
Yes, the vault is open on the app. Subsplash is the company, a Christian company.
Yeah, and so they will not cancel us. It's our app, and so we will not be canceled from our app. So if you're using YouTube to get this program, God bless you. It's a Mars Hill moment, but we won't guarantee. We're not going to bet that we'll be there forever. Right? No. Yeah.
And shout out again to Subsplash. If you are looking to have someone host your Christian content in an app, please reach out to them. They are amazing, and their customer service is top rated.
It really is. If you've got a church and you're looking for a way to both connect with your own congregation, but then extend your reach beyond the walls, that is a way to do it. Subsplash.com, and let them know you heard about it from Gilbert House.
Absolutely. And the conversation area of the app has been activated, has been for a month or two now, and many of you are taking advantage of that, so thank you.
There's some really wonderful connections being made there, and I'm remiss. I need to get caught up on some of the conversations, and especially the prayer requests that are going through that little app.
Oh, I always go through and read them, and many of you are dealing with some really stressful circumstances. Yes. Just understand that the Lord is always with you. Your shepherd is always there. And Derek and I may not always, get in there and respond to everything, but we do read it. It's just like the emails that come in or the messages to me. I don't always respond. We've only got so many hours in the day, and because we're trying to produce the content for you. But here's the thing. There are many of you who are taking the time to interact. So it's building the body of Christ.
Yeah, it's a virtual congregation.
Yes, exactly.
And that is the reason for it. That's why we started doing this years ago. We were having the opportunity to, why we started the Gilbert House Fellowship, I should say, to be more accurate. Podcasting we started in 2005. But the Bible study began when people were telling us at conferences, we don't have a church. Can you recommend a church for us? And we don't know that many churches outside of our own little local area. And quite honestly, we're not that familiar with the churches in our local area because we do our Bible study on Sunday mornings. But that was the reason for it, to start doing verse by verse exegesis of the scriptures, but also to show that it doesn't take a THD or a PhD to dig into the Bible.
It doesn't. You don't have to have any of those special degrees. Don't have to even have one letter after your name in order to get in there. You don't even have to be, my age. You can be 10 years old and you can dig in there.
Right. Using tools like Blue Letter Bible, Bible Hub. We've got some of those listed at our website, gilberthouse.org. In the right-hand column, some of our favorite study tools. Study Bible, like the Faith Life Study Bible, which we like because Mike Heiser wrote much of the commentary there, especially in the early books of the Bible, Genesis. So you get the divine counsel concept in a study Bible, which is rare. So there are tools out there that we can make use of, even if you're not a formal scholar, which neither of us, well, you are. I mean, you molecular biology. I mean, come on, that's beyond me.
Well, you studied economics. I would call you a scholar as well. And the fact is that you and I are both autodidacts. You learned how to learn.
We're nerds.
That's what college teaches you. It should teach you. Doesn't really do that in all cases anymore.
Dean Fitzgerald, on the first day we were there as freshmen, said, "You are not here to learn a trade. You are here to learn how to learn."
Exactly.
I remember that very clearly.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was told that same thing in many of my lower level classes. So yes, once you know how to learn, and you can do this with the apps that we tell you about, you don't have to pay a dime in order to study what God's Word tells you. But left turn.
Yes.
Bunny trail.
Diving into content.
Well, content indeed. Well, yesterday we had the honor of being on the panel with Tom Horn, Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, Joe Artis Horn, Donna Howell and Nita Horn to discuss upcoming products. Amazing offer that you're going to want to jump on as soon as those shows. In fact, you could even call and, do you guys have a special Christmas package? We can't tell you what it is yet. It's a new book. Yeah. 3 new books.
SkywatchTVStore.com. That'll be coming out soon.
Oh, yeah.
Getting close to the end of the year, but 3 new books.
Including one by Jeffrey Martis.
Oh, yes. That one really, really is interesting. Now, anything Tom Horn writes is already going to be interesting.
Anything Bob McGinnis writes.
And Bob McGinnis, who is a wonderful Christian man who's been working inside Washington, D.C. for more than 50 years. And God placed him in the belly of the beast.
Didn't he, though? There were a lot of questions I asked him yesterday, and he said, I can't tell you that.
Yeah. And I can tell you some of that.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. We had the opportunity to go out for a late lunch after the recording sessions. Again, those programs coming up on Skywatch TV later this year. But Colonel McGinnis's forthcoming book called Divided We Stand, which continues in a theme that he's been writing on, Give Me Liberty, Not Marxism, The Deeper State. So, his insights are really unique, well-informed, and biblical.
They are indeed. Well, again, it was an honor to be on that. And we get to do this, by the way, if you enjoy P.I.D. radio as an audio only, once the barn is done, which should be, sometime the end of September, maybe?
I would think so.
Early October at the latest, because we'll tell you the whole update on the barn after the break. But there are things that are going to be changing. You may have to see us with our morning hair.
Oh, no, I'm putting on a hat.
I may put on a hat too.
Or buzz the hair so at least you can.
Oh, hey, there you go.
Right
That's
now
what
I look like Giorgio Tsoukalos.
It's pretty. I think it would be appropriate for some of the topics we cover on PID radio.
That is true.
Getting to the topics.
Yeah, there was an interesting story that I'd seen a headline, and because of the other things that I talk about on 5 and 10 for Skywatch TV, I didn't dive into it, but I'm glad you brought it up this morning, because here in this context, we've got more time to dive into the subjects than I do on 5 and 10, which 5 and 10, 5 topics, 10 minutes. Okay, average 2 minutes per story.
Not enough.
Yeah, not enough time to really do a deep dive. But this story out of this small town in Kansas. Yeah,
a little bitty town paper, population about 2,000 people. And it's one of, look, if you live in a small town and you have enjoyed the local paper, it's my favorite. You get stories about so-and-so came to visit, from the big city and enjoyed a nice lunch with his aunt and uncle.
It's the kind of paper people read to make sure the reporter gets the facts straight.
Well, that's exactly it. It's usually local news, and you may have a couple of national or state news. But other than that, it tends to be very Mayberry-like. However, there is a small town paper that is trying to, because this is a guy with a journalism degree. I mean, not that, small town papers are run by people that don't know what they're doing. They often are.
Yeah.
But this gentleman wanted to just really hold the local elected officials accountable.
Yeah.
And therefore, he started looking into things. And what happened? Well, they got raided.
Yeah. That's really disturbing. The newspaper's called the Marion County Record. It's located in east central Kansas, the west edge of the Flint Hills, which I had to look up. I'm not that familiar with Kansas, but apparently it's a range of hills in which Flint lies close to the surface, hence the name.
Yeah.
East central Kansas, northern Oklahoma. Anyway, they were raided, and according to the police, it was an investigation into identity theft and computer crimes. Now, to me, looking into, wait a minute, raiding a newsroom here in the United States, the First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press and free speech. And we'll talk more about free speech as well this morning. This is rare when a newsroom gets raided, because at least in theory, in principle, the newsroom should be
sacrosanct.
I was going to use that very word. Yeah. So for police to raid a newsroom, I mean, we Americans think, well, this is the kind of thing that only happens in China or Russia or somewhere else. And here it is happening in a small town in Kansas. Now, Why would you do that? Well, if you're stepping on toes of some folks who are politically powerful in the area, you can see how that kind of thing might happen, but it's not the kind of thing that's supposed to be allowed. It's not supposed to happen here in the United States.
No, here's the thing. The story is that he was investigating a local official. We won't even name that person, but if the accusations that were written are untrue and verifiably untrue, then just sue for libel.
Yeah.
Take it to court and have that decision made.
Right.
Instead of using your office to prosecute as if a crime had been committed.
Right. Well,
other than libel.
I'm going to cite the Kansas City Star here. I'm looking at the Kansas City Star, which is reported on
there
this. The New York Post is also reported on this.
This is a big story.
The deeper you dig into this, the more bizarre.
Canary in the coal mine.
Yes, and that's the reason we're bringing this up. But we're not trying to focus on, hey, look at these small town folk and what's going on there, because it's I think symptomatic of a bigger story here.
Yes.
The local official who was being investigated was the police chief, a gentleman named Gideon Cody.
Oh, you are going to name? Oh, that's fine.
Again, this is per the Kansas City Star.
Okay. And this is everything that was printed in the paper. These are all allegations.
Right.
Just so you know.
Yeah. The newspaper began investigating why the town of Marion, Kansas, why the new police chief there left a job with the police department in Kansas City, which is why the Kansas City Star is reporting on this.
Right.
Where he was being paid $115,000 a year reportedly to take a job that pays half that much. Now, that's a little unusual. Now, I did something like that back in 2006.
Yeah.
But that's because I had my midlife crisis and I had to go back into radio broadcasting.
Well, that's just it. Why would you leave a nice big area where you have, frankly, great power as far as your position, and it's more interesting. I can tell you, we have a police officer in our family, you and I, and he actually served in Kansas City for a while and then moved to Indianapolis. And he liked being in a larger law enforcement agency because it gave him more to do.
Yeah.
He liked what he did.
Yeah.
So why would you take a pay cut, a half pay cut, to go to a small town?
Yeah, I mean, there could be good reasons for that.
Yeah, maybe you
just enjoy a smaller town lifestyle.
Stress?
Maybe stress, whatever. I became friends with a couple of local law enforcement officials here in Stone County, Missouri, both of whom really appreciate the fact that this is like Mayberry.
Yeah, it really is.
They don't want it to be like Kansas City, St. Louis, or Indianapolis.
Exactly.
So anyway, it is a little disturbing that this new small town police chief, essentially, again, according to the Kansas City Star, I want to make that clear. According to the piece in the KC Star, threatened the owner of the Marion County newspaper if they dared write about him. Like, okay, how then can you complain that this is a violation of privacy? And according to the Kansas City Star, the reporter checked a tip on an aspect of his behavior, and that I won't get into here. You can do a search. You can find it at the Kansas City Star. And apparently the story didn't even run the story. So
he just did the investigation.
Did the investigation. So that is disturbing enough. But what is even more disturbing is that the judge had to sign off on a warrant for the officer to go into the newspaper and seize the computers and so forth.
Well, in the judge's defense, if the judge had been told that this is what's going on, identity theft and computer crime, then that is a crime. It has nothing to do with free speech. That is a crime. However, the computers were returned because there was no evidence of the crime.
Yeah, computers and cell phones. They seized the phones from the newspaper as well. So,
it sounds like intimidation.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And again, it makes you wonder about the judge. And this is from the New York Post, that the judge who signed off on the raid reportedly has 2 arrests for driving under the influence.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, and according to the Post, raising questions about its possible impact on the jurist's decision.
That's really interesting as well.
Yeah.
Well, here, we live in a world that theoretically you have free will.
Mm-hmm.
According to the Lord God Almighty, the Creator, you do have free will. It's just sometimes our free will choices are constrained by our circumstances. But yes, if that judge did things that were improper, then someone else may use free will to come along and perhaps put a little pressure on a judge. We live in a corrupt world where free will is used to harm others.
Yeah.
And to control others, which is why this is a canary in the coal mine moment. Here in the United States, we have something called the First Amendment that does say you have free speech. It also protects the idea of our press, a free press.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the irony, and it almost seems like a left turn, but it is not. Prince Harry, who lives here in the United States now, is on record as saying that he doesn't understand our First Amendment rights. He is involved in a number of lawsuits in Great Britain trying to constrain the free press over there.
Mm-hmm.
He is also on the board of the Aspen Institute.
Ah, very influential think tank here.
Yes, which his job is to help prevent disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you define an opinion that is contrary to your own as dis or misinformation simply off the bat because you don't like it, that's against our First Amendment.
Right. But
he wants to erase our First Amendment.
Yeah, which is ironic because he's not even a citizen here. So,
but he wants the free will choice to say and write whatever he wants to do. In other words, his opinion, his truth, should trump your truth and my truth.
Well, that's... I hate to use the word privilege, but that is kind of what it is. I mean, he's raised in a bubble as a member of the royal family, and I'm sorry that's just not the way the world works for the rest of us, Harry.
It isn't, but he's not alone in that.
No, and that gets to the bigger issue here, that we are raising up a generation in the United States that believes that hate speech should not be protected.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you define hate speech? Well, therein lies the rub.
Yes, exactly.
Because,
who gets to decide what is hate speech?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that gets to the idea that we've had representatives from quite a number of social media companies, big companies, who have met with our administration regarding the control of speech online.
Yeah. That is been released or made public through Elon Musk's allowing journalists to access the internal communications as they decided, or as they prior to his purchase, as they squelched certain opinions. But we also know that the same thing happened with the White House actively lobbying Facebook and the app formerly known as Twitter to shut down opinions that ran counter to the official narrative. So, it's funny because when you read stories about what Americans think about the First Amendment, it's almost like a reflexive response. Oh yes, Americans overwhelmingly support the First Amendment.
Do you even know what it says?
That's the thing. It's like asking Americans, do you believe in God? 78% of Americans believe in God. Okay, what do they believe in God? When you start drilling down into what people actually believe about their faith or about freedom of speech, you find out they don't really believe in the First Amendment because by definition, hate speech must be protected for the First Amendment for freedom of speech to exist.
Yes.
That's just it. If you don't believe that, other than speech that actively threatens someone else's physical well-being, you can't threaten somebody and then claim that that's protected speech. You can't say something that puts someone's life in risk, like yelling, fire in a crowded theater or whatever. But aside from that, political speech, stating your religious views in a public place. Other people may find that offensive. Well, I'm sorry, but that is what the meaning of the First Amendment. Free speech means the freedom to say things that might offend other people.
Yes, exactly. And it gets into the idea of free speech regarding and free will. Free will, the Lord gave what we call the angels, the elders, the free will. That's why you have rebellions in the heavenlies. But he also gave human beings free will. And I think that we disappoint him over and over again, beginning with the Garden of Eden. But he still loves us enough that he's not going to just write us off because I don't like what you did. Amendment number 1, Congress shall make no law respecting Congress shall make no law of respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. There are a whole lot of things in the First Amendment that you and I take for granted.
And again, as Americans, I think it's reflexive. Do you believe in the first? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, should I be able to say that these people who believe differently than I do are sinners who are on the road to hell?
Right.
Oh, no, that's hateful. You can't say that. Well, sorry, but the First Amendment, it does say that. Now, should I say that? Probably not.
But there's
not
more
in that way. But
there's more in the First Amendment other than just free speech.
Yeah.
It's also Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion.
Yeah,
in other words, you can't have a state religion.
Right, which has been stretched to say that you can't do anything in any public place connected to religion. That's not what that means.
That's not what it means at all.
Is Congress making a law that says you must do such and so? No. Okay. Well, but lawyers and judges have ruled that, that it's wibbly wobbly, legally weaselly.
It's when you have a state, and generally that is, well, for instance, the Church of England.
Right. Yes.
Is actually headed by the sovereign. The monarch is the head of the church.
A state religion.
Imagine if President Biden were the head of a church. What kind of church would that be?
Well,
that scares me.
Yeah.
We don't want elected officials or even, hereditary officials to be in charge of your church.
Yeah. And bear in mind, this was written about a century or so after the Constitution, a little more than a century after the revolution in Great Britain. Oliver Cromwell and his group who beheaded King Charles I. It was a very unpleasant period. A lot of people died in England over that. So the framers of the Constitution wanted to avoid a government system in which political dissent could be framed as blasphemy, heresy.
Yes, exactly.
And disagreement over religion could be construed as treason.
But here's the irony. Today's wokeism is becoming a religion.
It absolutely is.
And we blaspheme by disagreeing.
Oh, yeah. And that's why they want to cancel us. Oh, no, there should be no freedom of speech. Well, maybe we should go back to using the blasphemy laws as defined by, an understanding of Scripture.
Well, I'm not.
I'm saying it tongue in cheek, of course.
Oh, I know.
But
sadly, we're going in that direction.
Yeah, but with the woke defining what constitutes blasphemy.
It's going to become a brand new Bible. Not the one that you and I know, but as you see.
But of course,
the Bible, as we know it, is being rewritten anyway.
Yeah. The Chinese are certainly trying to do it. But yes, you're right. There are very liberal denominations of Christianity that are trying to do the same thing, that are signing on to things like critical race theory, which is Marxist, which is fundamentally anti-Christian.
Yeah.
So they need to do a little deeper dive into their weekly Bible studies. Maybe they should, get into the Bible on a daily basis.
Well, I want to take a story that is just a total left turn from this. Total left turn.
Although we never turn left. We always turn
we
right.
do. Well, unless it's a Doctor Who episode.
Oh, then we turn left.
When we turn left. If you ever watch Doctor Who, you'll know what we're talking about. I know a lot of people have been concerned about certain injections that contain molecular
substances.
Yes, molecules. There's a story out August 18th, so it was just yesterday. Artificial DNA structures fitted with antibodies to fight tumors.
Okay.
It's a new type of immunotherapy, and it's essentially allowing a computer to design these self-folding DNA structures. Depending upon what bases you use in combination, the DNA itself can start to fold. In fact, natural DNA has little folds on the end. This would have antibodies, one at each end, one that is specific for the tumor, one that is specific for a T cell. Oh. In other words, it's acting as a bridge to bring in a T cell to destroy the cancer cell. It makes sense logically, but it's been done only in vitro, which means essentially in a lab. It hasn't been done in a human being or even an animal. In vivo, in something living, to see how it interacts, because look, your body is very complicated. Yeah. There are a lot of interactions. It's like a huge city. In fact, each cell is like a little town. And there are expressways, and there are communications. There are plans in the office, as how everything's going to be built. There's almost like a little directing mayor. You and I would call that Jesus. That directs how things really go. Well, if you introduce something totally foreign that looks a little bit like it's natural, these are artificial DNA structures. Now, whether or not they use traditional base pairs, I don't know, because there are base pairs that are not in our cells that exist and are often used in the lab. And they've been used for decades in the lab. So
different amino acids that normally do not comprise the GATC.
Well, amino acid, that's a little bit something different. But yeah, the base pairs themselves, a different type of DNA.
Okay.
I don't know if they're using that or not, but because they're calling it DNA, which is a specific type of molecule. But I'm curious to see, I'm going to read the actual report, the actual study. I'm looking at the report of the study right now, and it is at nanoworks.com, and that's spelled WERK, if you're interested. It's a great website that I look at pretty frequently. But yeah, I think what we're seeing is the cutting edge of molecular manipulation. We're going to try to reprogram your body.
Which is one of the concerns people have had about
certain things. Yeah, we're not going to name it, but yeah, I think this is something to keep an eye on, and it is possible that it may be used beneficially. So great if it can be used beneficially with no adverse side effects. Yeah, I'm all for that. But if it goes in another direction, not so sure.
Yeah. Well, interesting, because worst case scenario was that would be that this technology would be used and rolled out faster than is wise for financial gain. Worst case scenario is that it would be something else, literally trying to reprogram the human genome.
Well, and that's the question. Yeah. That is the question. So there, like I say, every day you wake up and there's news that you go, what?
Well, Seymour Hersh has a new column out. I want to talk about that straight ahead, because it's related to the ongoing situation in Ukraine and the fact that the corporate media is now admitting that things are not going as well as we had hoped. Yeah, that is straight ahead as P.I.D. Radio continues. Everyone learns differently, and that's why we write fiction.
It is. I find that some people love to read nonfiction, but there's something about fiction that psychologists say breaks that fourth wall. You no longer doubt what you're reading. You get so engrossed in the story that you learn. You can learn propaganda, or you can learn God's truth.
Absolutely. So yes, we write nonfiction books, but we are also using the gift of storytelling to try to teach spiritual warfare and spiritual truths. And during the months of August and September, we're offering all 10 of our novels at 20% off.
All 10 at 20% off? That's crazy.
That's right.
That is really, really a good deal. And now's the time if you want to buy gifts for birthdays or Christmas or whatever gift-giving season it is. It could even be Mother's Day next year. This is the time to save 20% on all of our fiction. And Derek's fiction is really, really good if you've never read it.
And Sharon's Red Wing Saga, 8 novels so far. She's hard at work on number 9. If you want to get engrossed in characters who are really grappling with the supernatural and trying to make sense of that world while teaching the divine counsel concepts that we try to communicate here, get involved in the Red Wing Saga. Again, all 8 of those novels, plus my 2 novels, The God Conspiracy and Iron Dragons, 20% off now only at our online store. That's gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and I can't believe we're already halfway through this episode. How can that happen? We can blather more and more.
As we get older.
You get more blather per second. We deliver. We deliver.
That is true. Well, the Build Barn Better project is really making progress.
Isn't it, though? And we just want to do a shout out to our friends, David and Barbara James. They are doing a really great job out there. Boy, it's beautiful.
It really is. The floor, thanks to Ozarks Concrete Coatings in Springfield, Missouri, done a great job there. But Christ-powered construction, David and Barbara doing the work. They've got the new panels on the building because there were some holes in some of the walls there from previous modifications made by the former owner. So those have been covered up. New windows are in. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
God bless you. But Dave and Barbara, their website, by the way, christpoweredconstruction.com. You can also find them on Facebook. They've got the electrical system run. They had to run a new service line from our breaker panel in the house to run 100 amp service out to the barn. That's been done. They've got the stub out now for the mini split, the HVAC system. So that'll be ready to go in just a couple of weeks. And we are on the schedule now for the spray foam insulation. That should be just after Labor Day, so just a couple of weeks out. Once that's done, they'll put in and should be putting in the new LED light fixtures this coming week.
I know, we're really excited about that. We're going to put some ceiling fans down the center because we want this to be a comfortable space. We've been talking to some friends of ours who are well known. We're not going to name them, but we may be having some actual guest interviews.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I know, isn't it?
But you have made that possible, and we are truly thankful.
We really are.
Because we've been working here really since we started P.I.D. Radio. It's always been from a spare room in the house, whether it's a finished basement, extra bedroom, what have you. Back in Indiana for a while, it was on the third floor
of that house that we were renting.
The attic up there, and the other place it was in the room above the garage. So here we're in the back bedroom, but we should have a dedicated space, I would say within 6 weeks at the outside. So we're looking forward to that. And again, we thank you for that. We'll post some to the Gilbert House Fellowship page at Facebook, probably. I've got a video that I need to just trim up a little bit and then show you what's going on inside the barn. And that'll be up this weekend. I
tell you what, I'm so excited about this. And thank you to all of you who have helped. And trust me, you have really helped. If the Lord, however, is laid upon your heart to donate a few cents or $1 or whatever, every donation is a blessing to us.
Amen.
No matter what the amount, no matter how small, no matter how big, it's all something that frankly is sacrificial for you. So consider these things, just the Lord blessing others through your willingness to share. So go to gilberthouse.org/donate and you can help us out right there.
Yeah, I'll post the little video clip there as well.
Oh, good. So, yeah. Good.
Seymour Hersh.
Yeah.
He's a journalist, Pulitzer Prize winner for his reporting on the My Lai massacre, excuse me, back in the 1970s. So he's been around a while, and he basically is he's writing now at Substack, because there's not a corporate media outlet in the United States that will touch him.
Yeah, despite the fact that we have a First Amendment.
Yeah, again, ideally we have a First Amendment, but you still have to find a corporate outlet willing to publish you.
At least you can still go to Substack.
Right. And before Substack came on the scene, and we've had people suggesting that we post some of our articles and stuff on Substack, just hours in the day. That's what it comes down to. He was publishing through the London Review of Books, oddly enough. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's got a Substack account now, and you could subscribe and support his work there. He's in his 80s now, but still very sharp and still with a lot of sources in the intelligence community. He posted an update just day before yesterday, on what is going on with Ukraine. Now, there was a recent international gathering, which was touted as a peace conference. And the United States sent our national security advisor, Jake Sullivan. This was hosted in
Riyadh?
Jeddah.
Oh.
But Saudi Arabia, yes. Yeah. So hosted by Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Arabia there. This, interesting how he's managed to rehabilitate his image, because you remember a few years ago when he was sort of a pariah. In fact, President Biden called him such after the assassination of
Khashoggi.
Adnan Khashoggi, or Jamal Khashoggi. Adnan was his uncle, the international arms dealer.
Yeah.
Jamal Khashoggi was killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. He's Khashoggi, by the way, just a brief rabbit trail. Should he have been assassinated? No, but he's usually described as a journalist for the Washington Post, when the fact is he was an intelligence asset for the government of Oman. And the Omanis and the Saudis don't get along.
No, so, it still doesn't, justify.
It doesn't justify anything, but the fact is that Khashoggi was not a journalist. He was an intelligence asset.
The MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, is trying to rehabilitate and trying to, frankly, be the broker for all things Western.
And interesting, he's using the Professional Golfing Association, the PGA, which he now owns.
Yeah, think about that.
To rehabilitate his image. Anyway, they had this meeting in Jeddah, the Peace Summit, which Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, attended. A number of others. China attended. They sent not their upper level delegates, but sent kind of a low level delegation. India also sent a delegate to the session. Probably, according to Hirsch, India and China attending, hoping for access to the Saudi oil reserves, which they both need.
But also to information.
One Indian academic observer, quoting from Hirsch now, dismissed the event as achieving little more than, quote, good advertising for NBS's convening power within the global south, the kingdom's positioning in the same, and perhaps more narrowly, aiding American efforts to build consensus by making sure China attends the meeting with Jake Sullivan in the same room.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, according to Hirsch's source, the whole meeting was the idea of Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor. And now, going to quote from this official, as reported by Seymour Hirsch. He planned it to be Biden's equivalent of President Woodrow Wilson's Versailles.
Get out of town.
Which was the peace conference that ended World War I.
Yes.
Yeah. The grand alliance of the free world meeting in a victory celebration after the humiliating defeat of the hated foe to determine the shape of nations for the next generation. Fame and glory, promotion and re-election. The jewel in the crown was to be Zelensky's achievement of Putin's unconditional surrender after the lightning spring offensive. They were even planning, again, this is according to this intelligence source quoted by Cy Hirsch, they were even planning a Nuremberg-type trial in the World Court with Jake Sullivan as our representative. Just one more bleep up, but who is counting? 40 nations showed up, all but 6, looking for free food after the Odessa shutdown, which is a reference to...
Yes, grain shipments.
Right, Putin shutting down the grain shipments after Ukraine bombed the Kerch Bridge, which connects the Russian mainland to the Crimean Peninsula. Right. So, anyway...
Was Russia represented at all?
No, Russia did not send a representative.
Well, that's why I think that India and China were probably there for no other reason. India still wants to please the West. China maybe wants to please the West. But the bottom line is they want the intel because they work with Russia.
They work with Russia. And The Saudis are also making noise about wanting to join the BRICS nations.
Yes.
Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
And they're having a big meeting in Africa.
Yes, this coming week, where the report is that they plan to launch a new currency backed by a basket of commodities, including gold, perhaps.
Yes.
So we'll see how that all comes through. But what's interesting about all of this is that this report by Cy Hirsch comes as the Washington Post reports, and this is why I bring this up. Normally, the Washington Post, it is obviously a biased source. If we've learned nothing else, but they all are. But the reason we note that this is coming from the Washington Post is because the Post is used as the official, semi-official leak source for the intelligence community here in the
Hunter
US.
Biden laptop stuff was at the Post.
New York Post.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
And the New York Post got canceled for it. No, with the Washington Post, when the CIA wants to leak something, it goes to the Washington Post. When the FBI leaks stuff, it goes to the New York Times.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So, according to the Washington
the New York Post just jumps in there and tries to.
Yeah. Which I found really, but speaking of the New York Post, by the way, and Hunter Biden's laptop, and this is in the forthcoming book, the chapter I contributed to, Tom Horn's forthcoming book called Legion, for We Are Many. Brilliant title.
Oh,
yeah.
And the subtitle is one of the longest subtitles.
Yeah, it is. I don't never remember that long subtitle, but the subject is really, really interesting, and how it all fits to the prophecy of the Essenes that we're moving into the final 50-year period of human history.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
I know.
But one of the headlines after the New York Post broke the Hunter Biden story in October of 2020, just before the presidential election, actually put the name of the newspaper in scare quotes.
What?
Yeah. New York Post, in air quotes, breaks story on Hunter Biden laptop, and basically was dismissing it. It's like, why would you put the name of the newspaper inside quotes like that? That is the name. This newspaper was founded in 1801 by Alexander Hamilton.
Exactly. You can italicize it if you want to. That's actually proper, but putting it in here.
It's like, it's not really a newspaper.
Yeah.
They call it the New York Post. Yeah, it's only been around for 223 years. Anyway, the Washington Post reporting on U.S. intelligence sources, of course, because this is where the CIA leaks information. The headline actually says, Ukraine offensive will fail to reach Melitopol, U.S. intelligence sources say. Now, why is that significant?
Yeah, exactly.
Because Melitopol was the objective of the much vaunted, long-awaited spring offensive that began in early June. We are now 2 months in. They have failed to break through. The Ukrainians have failed to break through the first line of Russian defenses. And Melitopol holds two key crossroads that would allow the Ukrainian army to cut the land bridge that the Russians established with their offensive, connecting Russia to the Crimea. So they wanted to sever the Crimea, cut off the flow of supplies over land, which then, of course, makes the Kerch Bridge the only land connection to the Crimean Peninsula. And if you sever that, then suddenly Crimea is cut off. But the Russians have been much better at playing defense than was thought and was promised. And so now Western intelligence sources, United States intelligence, now saying it's not gonna succeed.
Let me throw in one more bit of information regarding Ukraine right now. The F-16s that Biden said
I was going to bring that up.
Well, they are going to go to Ukraine. They're being held in nearby countries right now. But the caveat is the pilots have to be trained on them. Look, if I were Vladimir Putin and I were, looking at these things, it's like there's no doubt whatsoever that NATO is involved.
Right.
He knows he's at war with NATO. Why on earth does the West want that?
I don't really know. I honestly don't, because from a logical standpoint, this makes no sense.
No, but theopolitically, looking at the spirits behind the geopolitics that we're seeing, that does make sense, because we've got this pantheon of deities, fallen angels and demons that want control of the world. They want chaos, and then they will set up their new world order.
That is the best explanation that I can come up with as well. That makes the most sense.
It is the explanation.
Same reason for the chaos on our streets over the last few years. Well, few years. We saw it in the 60s and early 70s as well. And we saw it in the 1850s and 60s as well. It goes in cycles. The Haymarket riots in Chicago, other labor unrest in the 1890s. So yeah, this is a regular thing. They want chaos, divide and conquer.
And one of those things we're seeing, the Haymarket riots, that had to do with unions, I think.
Yeah.
And that same idea of unions, and at the same time, there were suffragettes. So union workers were men primarily, and the suffragettes, women primarily, that were rioting in the 19th century and then into the early 20th. They were upsetting everything. Well, we're seeing a very similar thing now. There are unions in the UK and in Europe that are striking and totally freezing government ability to do anything, making it impossible for you to go and get a cancer screening or to have a baby or to visit your friend at the hospital or to take your mom who's having a heart attack. You can't get through because either the NHS strikers aren't there to take care of you or the Stop Oil people
are blocking the road.
Are blocking the road. I mean, there are so many things going on over there. And the only explanation for me is to look at the spirits behind it all. Chaos is in the streets.
And taking that a step further, story from Canada, that in Quebec, we know that in Canada, medically assisted suicide is now a thing. Quebec is on track for 7% of all deaths now to be medically assisted suicide.
Sorry, but that's just, they're taking people who are depressed.
Yeah.
Who have clinically provable psychoses.
Headline from The Independent, and I'm not sure what the date was here. I think this is from 2022, but anyway, headline from The Independent in the UK. Canadian man applies for euthanasia because he can't afford a home, but reconsiders after $60,000 GoFundMe.
What?
Yeah. Once he suddenly raised some money through a GoFundMe campaign, it's like, oh, well, now I can afford to rent a place or get a place. And So in Canada, 2021, medically assisted death accounted for 3.3% of all deaths in Canada. The highest rate is in Quebec, 4.7%, British Columbia, 4.8%. Highest rates in the world, the Netherlands right now, 4.8%. I mean, 5 out of every 100 deaths, basically somebody committing suicide with the assistance of a doctor. But in 2022, Quebec jumped to 6.1%. According to this article, 73,000 people died in Quebec between July of 2021 and June of 2022. That means over 4,000 people in Quebec died by government intervention.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, it is on track.
Well, here's a left turn that is associated with this idea of totally overturning and controlling. Because it is order out of chaos, but the new order isn't going to be one you're going to like.
No.
It's a very controlling new order, but it'll convince you somehow that you're happy. Two stories that are connected. One is that Japan is testing a new CCTV that will be a science fiction Minority Report style of observation. The algorithms within these CCTVs are programmed to look for patterns. Not just facial recognition, but patterns. For instance, if you are standing on a street and you're looking around, just standing and you're just really looking around, that's a pattern that's considered indicative of possible criminal behavior.
Ill intent.
Yes. Yeah. You may be looking around because you're new to the area or you've lost your dog. Or you dropped your phone or something. Who knows why you're looking around? It's that sort of idea that the algorithm will assume you have, nefarious intent because you behave a certain way. That's pre-crime. The other story that I keep an eye on IARPA, which is the intelligence division of DARPA. a lot. And a few years ago, they had been talking about creating Amon-Hen. And it's an Army cyberspace effort to know everything that's going on in the world.
Okay, yeah.
From space. Amon-Hen, if you are a Tolkien fan, you understand that this is a sort of an elevation seat up atop a small hill where the Númenórean kings of the West would sit, and they would be given visions. In other words, it was almost like being taken up to the top of the hill and shown the entire world.
Yeah.
Well, that's what IARPA wants. They want, and there's a partner a project called Aladdin. Yeah, I know. So these are things that you don't hear about very often, but they are out there. And the structure is being put into place through low Earth orbit satellites called LEOs that observe everything you do, and working with algorithms here on Earth that observe everything you do. And our Defense Department looks at this and says, we need to know when the next 9/11 is going to happen.
They're trying to create Arya from the movie Eagle Eye.
Exactly what they're doing. Combine that with the Minority Report. What were they called? The women who were, in tanks of goo, and they were
the ones who would see. In the
they were like observers, almost like remote viewers.
Yeah.
So combine remote viewing with Arya, and you've got the template for a New World Order type of enforcement agency.
Right. And tie that to your currency, a digital currency, which can be programmed to not work outside of a certain geographic area.
Yeah, suddenly your car doesn't work.
Yeah, you're outside your 15-minute city. You need to return to your approved zone. I'm sorry, you're shopping for unapproved items or with an unapproved vendor or whatever.
Yeah.
Or your social credit score has fallen below the threshold to allow you to buy food this week. Yeah.
If you are sitting there and thinking, this is terrifying, well, yeah, it actually is, because it's more than just your daily life being controlled. It is the erasure of your free will. That is the goal. The fallen realm want you to make that last free will choice that will forever close the door to salvation.
Yeah, worship the beast. Yeah.
That is it, worship the beast. It's not just, hey, you get an injection. It is worship the beast. That's the free will choice.
And chaos is the precursor to it, because people want order, and we are rapidly, just look at the recent flash mob thefts in places like San Francisco, Los Angeles, where last weekend a Nordstrom was hit at one of the malls there. Yeah,
same thing happened in London on Oxford Street.
In Oxford Street, right, where you get a group of young people run into a store and run out with $100,000 worth of stuff. Target missing its this reported a couple of months ago. Target said it was going to miss its
quarterly report.
Yeah, it's annual targets because and they were very politically correct in the way they said it. They didn't come out and say it, but their CEO basically admitted that it's because of widespread organized shoplifting gangs that are going into stores and cleaning out shelves and then walking out of the stores. In Chicago, Walmart has closed all of its stores inside the city limits. It's still in the suburbs, but no Walmarts inside the city of Chicago. Portland, Oregon, same thing. The Walgreens stores have all left San Francisco. People are just going to get fed up and say, we demand order. And the only way to impose order when you've got a group of people who refuse to willingly, voluntarily choose to abide by the law is crack down on everybody. Take away free will.
Exactly. Well, the great irony here is you've got that sort of mass flash mob activity that the police sometimes and the stores just stand back, just let them do it.
Don't interfere.
And then you've got the algorithm that you're looking around nervously. Yeah. Oh, all right. That's a bad guy. Go get him.
Yeah. Arrest.
What?
Insane.
What a crazy world. One last thing before we go, and I know that then we're running low on time, and that is just this crazy, crazy story I talked about to you about a few days ago. There is a new movie being made about the Monkey King.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The reason I bring this up is because it's based on an old Chinese mythology that has to do, have you heard of Hanuman?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that monkey. And the Monkey King
You mean the little idol that Barack Obama carried around in his pocket all the time?
Yeah. Well, you know, there are a number of stories regarding Monkey Kings. It isn't just China, but this idea of the Monkey King, if you go back to the original stories, it's based supposedly about a famous monk named Xuanzang, but not necessarily, because it's based also on a spirit being, the Monkey King, who was able to disguise himself or appear as 72 different shapes.
72?
72. Yes.
Interesting.
As if he had 72 sons.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that's significant because that number, numerologically speaking, is equivalent to the number 70 in the ancient Near East, which basically means all of them.
Yeah, it's
when
also...
Jesus came down the mountain, Mount Hermon, the Canaanite Mount Olympus, he sent out 70 or 72, depending on your translation of the Bible, disciples ahead of him into Galilee.
Now, I think 72 is a really interesting number as opposed to the 70.
Right.
Because if you put a pentagram inside a circle, you get 5 points that are 72 degrees apart.
That's right. 72 times 5 is 360.
Yes.
It's exactly right.
Well, strange things in the world, but remember that your shepherd is with you. And we want to end on that idea.
Yeah.
Again, we're just going to remind you Psalm 2. Why do the nations rage and imagine a vain thing?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The Lord sits in his heavens and on his throne. And he laughs at their plans. He doesn't laugh at our situation.
No.
He empathizes with our situation because he's been through it. And he is there to offer you salvation and protection. And he will always be with you once he is your shepherd. And that is the free will choice that each one of us has. So my advice to you is, while you still have free will, before you are forced into, you feel like you're forced into making a terrible free will choice, because I'll tell you what, when the day comes, it may be presented in a way that is really enticing or intimidating. If you want your children to live, you'll make this choice. Boy, you could have a really great house and a great job if you just make this choice.
Yeah.
Want to buy and sell? Make this choice.
Right. Yeah. Here's the golden ticket. Or if you want to eat next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will be one way or the other. But today you still have freedom of speech. Today we still have certain rights. But the bottom line is we still have a window of opportunity to share that gospel message with everyone around us. And we have a great commission. To lift up Jesus, crucified, risen, and coming again. Make
disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, which is a declaration of victory.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah.
Oh, it is so, so good. So, we just want to end on that high note because he's coming back.
Yeah. Focus on the news of the day. It'll drive you crazy.
Yeah, you know
just
what?
Remember, when Jesus said, when you see all these disturbing things, look up, because your redemption draws near.
I know, and I just want to add that when we were talking to Tom Horn, that book you got to read, Legion. It's coming out soon. You so have to read that because he's been given information, I think, once again. So Derek and I try not to be date setters. We really do.
True. Yeah.
But I think that it's pretty obvious that it's very, very close.
Yeah. It's like the, and I say this, just bear in mind, I'm not an athlete. But as those who participate in a foot race, you don't run to the tape, you run through, because you start slowing down. If you, that's my goal, you subconsciously, you start slowing down. No, we're planning to run through the tape. And if the Lord calls us out of here before we think we're done, well, that's fine. That means we're running at full speed right up to the final bell.
Exactly. That's what my goal is, right up until the final breath.
Well, tomorrow, Gilbert House Fellowship, tomorrow morning, we will be back with our Bible study as we continue through the Psalms and 2 Samuel. Tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker, it's Iron and Myth, episode 20. Yeah, 20 months we've been doing that now.
I know. And speaking of Iron and Myth, March of 2024. Now, in 25, we're having the Iron and Myth Tour, which is why this came to mind. But in 2024, if you are interested in going with us to Israel, Timothy Alberino is going. He's definitely going along with his beautiful wife, Jasmine. She's the real star. But a possibility of someone else joining us. We just had someone contact us and say, I'd really like to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's someone
we had
that
reached
Timothy
out to them.
Alberino recommended.
Yep. So we will know more probably within the next week.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. You can always find out more at gilbertsinisrael.com or gilberthouse.org/travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hope you go. We'd love to see you there.
Amen. Till next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, PIDradio.com, Twitter @PID Radio, or by downloading our free app, PIDradio.com/app or gilberthouse.org/app. Join us each week for our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship.